Hey guys, this is Red and Blue, the channel on YouTube for all things PSG in English. Please subscribe. Today, let's talk about goalkeepers. Donnarumma is still very much in flux. He's got a contract renewal proposal in front of him. Him and the club have been talking about it for the better part of 6 months at this point. There's still no resolution. And there's a growing concern, I would say, that it doesn't smell that good. I think, like personally, I'm still like relatively optimistic about it, and I'll go into details. But I wanted to touch base and go through, what is the latest information that we're getting, the information that we have on the proposal that PSG put in front of him, and why he hasn't agreed to it at this point. And then, like, in the event that he'd be leaving, which I think is far from done, who are some of the potential options that we should be looking at to replace him, with the idea of bringing in someone who can step in as number one and get the space in our starting 11 for next season. So, starting with Donnarumma. So the situation is he's out of contract at the end of next season. So we still do have time. We still have him under contract for one season anyway. But obviously, we don't want to end up in a situation where he could be leaving on a free. If you remember, that's what happened with him for AC Milan, and when he came to PSG, we got him on a free transfer. And so the reality of that move back then is that Leonardo gave him an excellent contract to convince him to move to Paris. Right now, he's earning about 12 million euro a year, which puts him in the top five of earners within the PSG team. And for goalkeeper, it's probably in the top three of goalkeepers worldwide. It's a really, really, really big salary for a player in general, but even more for a goalkeeper. And the PSG policy as well has changed since then. Because what Luis Campos tries to do now is that he likes having a smaller, flat salary, and then he adds a lot of bonuses to come on top of it. Typically, depending on how many games the players plays, and then what his performance looks like, both individually and also for the team overall. And so there's a way for him to have a lower salary to begin with, but then with bonuses make up for it and go to the level or above what he's getting right now. And so that's very much the offer that we put in front of him. Apparently, PSG offered somewhere between 8 and 9 million of base salary, but with all of those bonuses coming on top of it. And so essentially taking him to a place where he's earning 12 million a year for sure, to a place where he could be earning 12 million and potentially a little bit more as well. And yeah, I think, for him, obviously, I can understand why it's, a hard thing to do. I don't think anyone, and myself included, I wouldn't want to, sign a new contract for less money than what I'm earning. So there's no reasons for football players to be doing the same. And Donnarumma, like, true or false, I don't know him personally, but obviously since he left Milan on a free without renewing his contract there, he also has this image within world football and within Italian football that he's someone who cares a lot about money. If you remember when we went back to play in San Siro last year, and like the tifosi there were throwing fake dollar bills at him as a way of trying to rile him up. And they even nicknamed him Donnarumma for a while. So he does have that image. I don't know if it's true. I don't know if it's not. Ultimately, like, I can't fault him either way because, football players have short careers, and it's part of the game to be earning as much as you can, as quickly as you can. And like I said, like, I don't think anyone in the world would be super thrilled at reducing their salary. So anyway, so that conversation with PSG has been going on for a while. Initially, they had found a deal, actually, and Donnarumma had agreed to it. But that was early in the calendar year, and that was before, PSG went on this amazing run in the Champions League and ended up winning it. And Donnarumma, who was, criticized a fair bit at the beginning of the season, after the Monaco game, when he got the scar on the cheek, became, world-class goalkeeper again. And now he thinks he deserves more money, which once again, like, can't really blame him for that. Obviously, playing at the level that he's at, it does give him some credit. Personally, I'm of the mind that, well, I think like the player has said multiple times that he loves PSG, that he wants to stay there, that he's a big fan of the club, and blah blah blah. And so, like, I think it's time for him to show that. I understand that Luis Campos wants to stick with the approach that he has for salaries, and wants to stick with the wage structure that he has. I can't fault him for trying to be sensible financially, especially given the years of nonsense that we've been through. So I hope both parties can put a little bit of water in their wine, mellow out a little bit, and find a deal that allows him to stay and allows him to be happy about it. Um, we'll see what goes. It's gonna have to happen in the next few weeks anyway. And I think one of the additional factors that might be playing into it is that, um, for all of the talent that Donnarumma has, I think like there's very very few clubs that would be able to give him the salary that he wants. And the reality is that as we get closer and closer to the reality of him looking at other clubs, the potential clubs would be in a position to bring him are becoming less and less. And in the past we had talked about Real Madrid not really looking at it anymore. We had talked about Chelsea not looking at it anymore. There were talks about Italian clubs. They really don't have anywhere near the amount of money necessary to do it. The only two that remain, as far as we've seen in recent days, are Manchester City and Bayern Munich. I think both clubs have goalkeepers in place. Man City has Ederson. He's not really like at the same level as Donnarumma. He's a good goalkeeper, but he's not really like top five or top, even like maybe not top 10 in the world at this point. Very strong keeper with his feet, but fairly inconsistent and really like not one of the top 10 goalkeepers in the world. So for a club like Man City, they're definitely open to getting better. So they've been thinking of replacing Ederson, and in that context, they were looking at Donnarumma. And I think the latest that we heard is that for them, there's no rush, and so if they have to pay 12 million a year for Donnarumma, they would rather not have to pay a transfer fee on top of it, and so they'd be looking at him at the end of the contract in one season. And personally, I find it a bit surprising as well because we know, obviously Pep Guardiola is also someone who likes his goalkeepers to be very strong with their feet. And I think, for all of the flags that we've been giving to Donnarumma in the past, he did make a lot of progress with it this season. But he's still not Manuel Neuer, to be to be frank. He's got other qualities and he's a great goalkeeper, but yeah, that's not his primary strength. So I'm a bit surprised that Pep would really like go for him. But yeah, anything is possible, I guess. And then the second club who's still in the running for Donnarumma is Bayern Munich. Like I said, Bayern Munich, they still have Neuer, who we've seen in the Club World Cup is still a fantastic goalkeeper. Obviously, he's starting to show his age as well, more than a little bit. I think he's 40 years old or like pushing on 40, so really like at the tail end of his career by any mean. And so Bayern is also thinking about the right timing of making that transition and who might be their goalkeeper after Neuer. And in that context, Donnarumma is obviously a very attractive option for them. But for them too, they're in the same situation of saying, we can pay 12 million for a goalkeeper. We have the pockets for it, but we don't really want to pay a transfer fee on top of it. And so, in an ideal world, we'll do that next season, get him on a free, save a bit of money there so we can pay him more. And I think, for Donnarumma, like, he's got to be looking at this and he's got to be thinking that, he's going to be thinking in terms of, how much he's worth and how much the market is valuing him. Because I think, there's clubs who are willing to pay 12 million a year for him, but they're not willing to pay a transfer fee for it. And I think, once you get in the nitty-gritty of negotiations with those clubs and so on, because it's very easy for both of them right now to go like, oh yeah, we'll pay 12 million. Then we'll go like, we'll see when they go in actual contract discussions. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, what taxes, what bonuses, how does it work, and so on. yeah, we'll see if they actually like go to that level. Possible, not like far from impossible, especially, Man City has very deep pockets, so completely possible. But yeah, I'm a bit dubious about it. And yeah, like I said, in the end, I hope that PSG and Donnarumma manage to find some sort of middle ground where both sides don't give up everything that they want, but find some sort of compromise that keeps everyone happy. That said, if they can't find that deal, if Donnarumma were to leave this year, which is far from given because right now no one wants to bring him this summer. Uh, but if you were to leave this year, or even like at the end of next season, I guess, but like we'd have more time to really think things through, who could be in a position to replace him? And I think the first name is one that's been talked about in massive amounts in French media is Lucas Chevalier, who's the goalkeeper of Lille, who's a relatively young goalkeeper. He's 24 years old when Donnarumma is 26, so he's a couple of years younger. Obviously not as experienced as Donnarumma at the same age. He's been doing very well with Lille for the past couple of seasons, and I think this season in particular, Lille played in the Champions League group phase and like went on to the later stages as well. And he really made an impression as a goalkeeper in some of those games. He really came out strong and showed a lot of talent there. And so he's been kind of universally talked about as this kind of next gen goalkeeper who could be going on to really like a top tier career in PSG or somewhere else for that matter. And so for him, this summer is really the time where he could be taking that next step in his career. I think a lot of English teams are very interested in him. There's been conversation about him with Man United and Aston Villa. So we're not quite at the top level. And I think, for him at this stage of his career, I think like both clubs are a bit underwhelming. I don't want to sound like too big or anything, but obviously, like, Man United has been a bit of a disaster class, and even if they've got a rebuild going on, we've yet to see the effect of it. And then Aston Villa, for, mad respect for Unai Emery, who's done great work there. They haven't yet built up regular presence in the top five teams in Premier League, top four teams in Premier League. I don't think they qualified for the Champions League next year. So there is a question mark for like Lucas Chevalier. If he wants to keep progressing, for me, I would very much hope that he stays or that he goes to a team that play in the Champions League, because he does need to keep playing at that level every year. So that would be the thing. PSG in that context would be a fairly obvious choice. He's a young French goalkeeper who needs like high level Champions League football and so on. We're there. We might need a keeper, so it's pretty natural. In terms of money, because I think that's where it gets a little bit tricky. Currently, Chevalier is valued at 30 million euros, but the word on the street from Lille, and Lille is particularly difficult to negotiate with, is that they want 70 or 75 million euros for him, which is a lot of money, honestly. Like, imagine like paying more than what we paid for Kvara for a 24-year-old goalkeeper who's only played one season in the Champions League. Honestly, like, I mean, it's what they put out right now, and obviously there's negotiation, but even like, paying more than 50 million for him, I'd really like question that and think we're way overpaying for him. And I think from my perspective as well, obviously there's, like I said, there's been a lot of conversation in France about him. He's been talked about. I heard an interview recently from one of the guys who's helping train Courtois in Real Madrid, who's, admittedly the top goalkeeper in the world for the past 5 years, at least 5-10 years. And so this guy who's helping train him was talking about Chevalier and saying, Chevalier on what he's shown is probably like the biggest talent at goalkeeper position coming out of France in basically a generation. So he does have really a lot of talent, a lot of promise, a lot of things going for him. But at the same time, like I said, I think he's been in Lille for 2 years. He's only played in the Champions League 1 year. He's starting to be part of the French team, but he's still only a second choice for goalkeeper. And so he still has a lot to learn, a lot to show, a lot to confirm. And it's really typically like where it gets very hard for goalkeepers. And that's also where, like for goalkeepers in Paris as well, PSG, can be very very difficult environment for players and especially for goalkeepers to confirm and reach that next level in. If you look at Donnarumma, we brought him on very young. He was already a confirmed goalkeeper who had played for AC Milan for a few years, who had been in the Champions League, who was the starting goalkeeper of the Italian national team, and still for a few years, like it really took him a lot to deliver at the level that we knew he had in him. And improve in terms of his passing and technical skills, in terms of his distribution, in terms of his aerial stops. Yeah, it took a few years. And so, do we want to go through that again with another keeper? Take a step back and take a bet that in the next 1, 2, 3 years, Chevalier can really like live up to the promise that he has for like upwards of 50 million euro. Tough one. I don't know. Personally, I'm not really super convinced about it. And I think there's other options that we might want to be looking at that might be a better fit for us. Let me know what you think about this one in the comment, because obviously, like, there's pros and cons. So very happy to discuss. Second one I was thinking of, Diogo Costa of Porto and the Portuguese national team keeper. Also, like, to me, like, probably the best option we would have. He's a world-class goalkeeper already. He's very well established. I think he's 25 years old. He's 25 years old. He's going to be turning 26 in September. He's been playing for Porto for a few years, for the Portuguese national team for a few years. He's got a market value around 40 million euros, 45 million euros. And, I think he's been talked about for a few years with every big club in the world has been linked to him at some point. The last one that we heard was Man City. And so Man City was also looking at him as a potential Ederson replacement, but this summer, those rumors have kind of toned down a little bit. And so now there's actually not that much happening around him. Word on the street is that he'd be available for around 60 million euro. Very strong goalkeeper, and is, to me, in terms of his playing profile, kind of the best of both worlds, in the sense that he is very good with his distribution and his passing, but he's also literally like a world-class shot stopper and on his line reflexes and so on. Really, really strong there. Not quite Donnarumma level, but Donnarumma might be like the best in the world, but really not far from it. And so I think if you compare with the Chevalier, for example, who still has that question mark of being unproven and doesn't have a lot of experience at the highest level, in this case you do have that, and you have a guy who's ready to step in. He'll be our starting goalkeeper from day one, and honestly, like, we can feel good about it. I think, to me, that's probably like the best profile that might be on the market right now. 60 million is a lot of money, but I think it's definitely worth it. Mendes is his agent, so we know the Campos, like, Portuguese relationship and so on. If we have to, like, to me, that's the one I would go for. And then, like, other options as well. Old PSG man, Mike Maignan, French, who was trained in our academy. He left at the PSG at a very young age. Essentially, back then, it's funny. So he came up. He was of the same year as Alphonse Areola, who's now at West Ham. Who was our goalkeeper for a while, and went on he was second goalkeeper in Real Madrid for a year. He was in Villarreal as well for a few years. He's at West Ham now. He's had, like, kind of a whirlwind career across Europe, never really living up to his potential, Areola, but very decent career. And basically, those two were in the same year in the academy, and they were such good friends and creating so much trouble that PSG decided, okay, we need to get rid of one of those two. We need to separate them. And back then, Areola was really like a very, very like well-known high potential for goalkeeper. So we decided to keep Areola and let Maignan go. And I think Maignan went on to Lille and then to AC Milan when Donnarumma came to us. And now he's the number one like French goalkeeper in the national team and so on. So bad decision on our part back then. And yeah, like he's in the same situation as Donnarumma, which is that his contract is ending at the end of next year. He's been looking at options. There's been a conversation with Chelsea before the Club World Cup that kind of petered out and didn't really pay off. He's a former PSG guy. He's a French guy. He's older though. He's 30 years old already. One of the best goalkeepers in the world when it comes to passing and distribution. So I think for Luis Enrique, that'd be a quality that he'd be very, very keen on. He's also extremely strong when it comes to penalty kicks, which, in the Champions League, we've seen this year in Liverpool how big of an advantage it can be to have a keeper who's really good at that. He's a little bit more than a little bit. He can be fairly inconsistent, and I think that's a big drawback with him. Is that he's not at the same level as a Donnarumma, quite simply, and so he might be prone to just like random mistakes here and there, and yeah, like just not being completely foolproof, which I think in PSG, like I can already see as soon as he makes a mistake in a Champions League game, high profile, and we lose points because of it, or we lose a game because of it, I can hear the media and the fans and the chatter and so on, and like, yeah, like it kind of worries me before it even happens. So yeah, that said, it'd be a lot cheaper, probably somewhere in the 20, 25, 30 million euros, I would say. So there's advantages to it. It could be a short gap solution for a few years, while we see who might be like that next generation of goalkeepers. Does Chevalier live up to the promise? There's another one, a young one in Toulouse, Guillaume Rest, who's also being talked about very highly, but still very, very young. So we could take Maignan for a couple of years and see what happens, and revisit in a couple of years. Yeah, there's options on the table anyway. So yeah, anyways, that's kind of what I was looking at in terms of goalkeepers. Let me know what you guys think in the comment. I think at this point, I would say probably like 90+% of PSG fans really want Donnarumma to stay after the season that he's had. So I don't think that one is much of a debate. But shit happens, and so if he were to go, who would be the ones that you think would be best to replace him? Who would you want to come in the club? Let me know. I think I'm very curious in particular about Chevalier, because there's so much chatter, and personally, I'm still like not 100% convinced. So let me know what you guys think. Please leave a comment. Please leave a like. Super useful, and it always makes me feel good as well when people like the video. Please do subscribe to the channel. We're this close to getting to 200 subscribers. So I'm literally, on my phone about 24 hours a day looking at that. Truly loving it, and I'm so thankful for everyone following the channel anyway. So please do subscribe if you're not already. And yeah, don't forget, with a goalkeeper in the park, or whoever that might be, ici c'est Paris!